Anwar al-Awlaki was a controversial figure whose journey took him from an American-born imam in US mosques to a prominent English-language propagandist for jihadist violence. Born in 1971 in Las Cruces, New Mexico, he was initially viewed as a charismatic speaker among young English-speaking Muslims. After moving to Yemen, his rhetoric shifted to support violent extremism, aligning with Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Through online lectures and writings, he inspired global audiences and influenced decentralized radicalization. Killed in a US drone strike in 2011, al-Awlaki remains a debated figure, reflecting both his personal evolution and the changing landscape of extremism in the digital age. Welcome to Wars of the World, as we look at the American cleric who radicalized a generation. Al-Awlaki was born on April 21, 1971, in Las Cruces, New Mexico, while his father, Nasser al-Awlaki, was pursuing graduate studies in the United States. His American birth granted him citizenship, a detail that would have significant implications later in his life. However, his identity was shaped by more than just his nationality. When he was young, his family moved to Yemen, where he spent much of his childhood. The 1970s and 1980s were tumultuous years for Yemen, marked by political change and the rise of religious conservatism. In this context, he absorbed the Arabic language and Islamic traditions, influenced by his father's position within Yemen's educated elite. As a teenager, al-Awlaki returned to the United States and attended school, eventually enrolling at Colorado State University in the early 1990s to study civil engineering. During this time, he became active in campus religious circles, including the Muslim Students Association, where he began leading prayers and delivering talks. This helped him showcase his public speaking skills and interest in religious scholarship. Although he seemed to follow a conventional path, questions later emerged about the specifics of his academic record. By the time he completed his studies, al-Awlaki found himself at the intersection of two worlds: an American citizen with a Western education, deeply rooted in Yemeni culture and Islamic tradition. This unique perspective would later shape his influential communication style and the trajectory of his life. In 2002, Anwar al-Awlaki left the United States due to increasing scrutiny from authorities following the September 11th attacks. Although he had not been charged with a crime, investigations into his connections made his situation precarious. He first traveled to the United Kingdom, where his lectures began to take on a more political tone, focusing on conflicts in Muslim-majority regions and criticizing Western foreign policies. Later that year, he moved to Yemen, his family's country of origin, which was facing internal instability and pressure from the US to combat extremism. In 2006, Yemeni authorities arrested him on suspicion of links to militant activities, imprisoning him for about 18 months without a formal trial. This experience is believed to have deepened his grievances and contributed to an ideological shift. After his release in 2007, he transitioned from being a mosque-based imam to a more independent voice. His sermons and writings increasingly framed global events as a conflict between Islam and the West, and he began to openly justify violence against Western targets. By 2009, he had aligned himself with Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP, where his fluency in English and cultural understanding made him an effective communicator. He produced materials aimed at Western audiences, encouraging them to view global conflicts in personal terms, which in turn influenced individuals who might not otherwise join organized groups. Overall, al-Awlaki evolved from a community leader into a significant figure in extremist propaganda, setting the stage for his global influence by the end of the decade. Moments like this often only scratch the surface. The full reality of the war on terror is much more complex than what we can cover in a single video. That's one of the reasons I've started using Audible. They have full audiobooks that delve into the strategies involved in wars and counter-terrorism decisions, providing a more in-depth look at what was really happening behind the scenes. You can get a completely free audiobook and a 30-day trial by using the link below. If you want to gain a deeper understanding of counter-terrorism, be sure to check it out. It's the first link in the description. By the late 2000s, al-Awlaki had entered a phase of his life that would significantly define his global impact. No longer confined to mosques or physical communities, he operated in a space that transcended geography, the internet. This shift was not incidental, it was central to his influence. He emerged as a pioneering jihadist figure who understood the power of digital media for outreach and recruitment. Unlike previous ideologues constrained by language barriers, he communicated fluently in English, resonating with Western audiences, especially younger individuals seeking identity or purpose. His early lecture series on Islamic history and the lives of the prophets circulated widely online, attracting listeners who had no prior exposure to extremist ideas. Over time, his content became more radical, blending religious narratives with political messaging that guided audiences toward extremist conclusions. Al-Awlaki's influence was evident through his connection to real-world attacks. Nidal Hassan, responsible for the Fort Hood shooting, communicated with him before the attack, while Umar Farouk Abdul-Muttalib, linked to the failed bombing of Northwest Airlines Flight 253, was also associated with him. His impact extended through AQAP's English-language magazine Inspire, which combined ideological essays with practical guidance, promoting lone wolf attacks, individual acts inspired by ideology rather than directed by leadership. This marked a significant evolution in extremist strategy. Al-Awlaki's lectures and writings frequently appeared in the backgrounds of individuals radicalized in the West. His indirect influence made it difficult to counter. He provided a framework for interpretation that people could adopt independently. Ultimately, he became more than just a propagandist. He was a bridge between cultures, using modern media to convey a message that could transition from online platforms to real-world violence. His legacy illustrates how, in the digital age, influence can operate without borders, rooted in ideas that spread across a networked world. By the end of the 2000s, al-Awlaki had emerged as a significant figure in US counter-terrorism efforts, transitioning from a person of concern to an actively operational member of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. His ability to communicate effectively with English-speaking audiences and link propaganda to action distinguished him from other individuals within the network. In a controversial decision, the US government placed al-Awlaki on a list for targeted killing, a move complicated by his status as a US citizen. Typically, due process would require that charges be brought and a trial conducted before depriving someone of their life. However, the government argued that armed conflict with Al-Qaeda justified a different legal framework. This decision, made during Barack Obama's administration, illustrated a shift in counter-terrorism strategy, favoring targeted strikes over reliance on capture and prosecution. Al-Awlaki's inclusion on the list became public in 2010, leading to legal challenges from civil liberties organizations representing his father. They contended that such actions violated constitutional protections due to the lack of judicial oversight. The courts ultimately dismissed the case on procedural grounds, leaving significant constitutional questions unresolved. Meanwhile, a classified legal rationale was crafted to justify al-Awlaki's targeting, highlighting that he posed an imminent threat and that capturing him was impractical. The definition of imminence became contentious, interpreted broadly to include ongoing involvement in planning attacks. Public debate intensified as details emerged about his connections to plots, such as the Northwest Airlines flight and the Fort Hood shooting. Critics called for greater accountability, while supporters pointed to these ties as evidence of a clear and present danger. Despite efforts to locate him in remote areas of Yemen, capturing al-Awlaki proved to be a significant challenge, leading to an increased reliance on drone strikes. He became emblematic of a new kind of threat that blended ideology with operational influence and became a focal point in discussions about the balance between national security and the rule of law. Ultimately, the decision to target him raised fundamental questions about citizenship and executive power that continue to resonate today. By 2011, the search for al-Awlaki had shifted to the remote and rugged regions of northern Yemen, where government control was limited, allowing militant groups such as Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula to operate with relative freedom. The challenging mountainous terrain and complex tribal dynamics made traditional military operations difficult and risky. Consequently, US planners increasingly relied on aerial surveillance and drone strikes. In the early hours of September 30th, this strategy culminated in a significant operation. A US drone strike targeted a convoy traveling through Al-Jawf province. Among those killed in the strike was al-Awlaki, along with Samir Khan, another American citizen, and the editor of AQAP's English-language magazine Inspire. The operation was a collaboration between the Central Intelligence Agency and the Joint Special Operations Command, highlighting the increasingly integrated nature of US counter-terrorism efforts. The strike against al-Awlaki resulted from years of intelligence gathering and legal deliberation. Unlike traditional military engagements, this was a targeted killing based on a thorough assessment of his role as a dangerous propagandist for AQAP. US officials deemed the operation a significant success, as it eliminated a high-value target who had evaded capture, and President Barack Obama publicly acknowledged al-Awlaki's involvement in planning attacks against Americans. However, his killing raised concerns about his status as a US citizen, sparking a debate over due process and executive authority. Critics argued that the strike set a troubling precedent, while supporters contended that the context justified the action. Weeks later, on October 14th, a US drone strike in Yemen killed Abdulrahman al-Awlaki, Anwar's 16-year-old son, who had no involvement with AQAP. Although officials claimed he was not the intended target, his death intensified criticism of the drone campaign, highlighting issues of civilian casualties and accountability. These events marked a pivotal moment in drone warfare, showcasing US counter-terrorism capabilities in remote areas. While Anwar al-Awlaki's death ended his direct influence, his lectures and writings continued to circulate online, leaving an unresolved legacy of ideas that could not be eliminated in the same way as their source. Investigations into violent acts in various Western countries frequently revealed his influence, as individuals consumed his material as part of their self-radicalization processes. Al-Awlaki promoted a decentralized model of violence through his work with Al-Qaeda. His persuasive communication style, combined with his American background, resonated with many individuals, making his message compelling. His legacy raises complex questions about counter-terrorism and the implications of targeting a US citizen. The killing of his son further complicated perceptions of the human costs of remote warfare. Al-Awlaki's story represents a transformation in influence in the digital age, illustrating how modern communication can amplify extremist ideas. His narrative underscores the resilience of online content and demonstrates that the impact of figures like him extends beyond their physical presence, shaping ongoing discussions about radicalization long after their deaths.